Have you ever really thought about what makes a translation good? I mean, it's so much more than just plugging in words from one language and spitting them out in another. Today, we're going to dive into this fascinating process, watching a simple story transform into a piece of polished, literary French. It really shows you that translation is a true art form. So our story comes from an old French grammar book from way back in 1925. It's this little anecdote about Napoleon, and it kicks off with this fantastic line. This is our starting point, our raw material. And we're going to follow its entire journey, from a super direct, word-for-word translation to something with some real artistic punch.
Here's the plan. We'll start with the original story, then take a peek at a first draft translation that's, well, it's competent but kind of flat. After that, we'll get into the fun stuff, breaking down the specific word choices that really make it sing. We'll even touch on that age-old translators debate, accuracy versus style, before, finally, revealing the polished final version.
Okay, so first things first, let's get our bearings. We're starting with a short little anecdote, originally in English. This is our source text, the foundation for this whole translation exercise. The story itself is pretty straightforward, but it's got some real drama. Picture this. It's a dark night. Napoleon's just wandering near his own military lines, totally lost in his head. A sentinel shouts a challenge, not once, but twice, and gets nothing back. So the sentinel fires a warning shot that just zips past Napoleon's ear. Napoleon, snapped out of it, confronts the soldier, who has this amazing punchline. He says he doesn't waste his ammo on sparrows. He only shoots at emperors. Great little story, right? Okay, now let's see what happens when we try to move it into French.
All right, let's look at our first attempt. This is what you might call a faithful translation. You know, it gets all the facts right, it checks all the boxes, but it's just missing that spark.
Take this sentence, for instance. It literally means, Napoleon, lost in his thoughts, did not reply. And that's fine. It's perfectly correct. But if you speak French, it just feels a little clunky, you know? A little too close to the English way of putting things. It does the job, but it definitely doesn't sing.
So, to be fair, this first draft has its strengths. It's super faithful to the original, it's clear, but for literary work, that's just not enough. The sentences feel kind of blocky, and it doesn't have its own voice. It reads like, well, like a translation, not like a story. And this is where the real artistry starts to kick in.
And now we get to the really fun part. Let's watch how this text gets elevated from just competent to genuinely captivating. This is where you see the translator switch gears from being a technician to being an artist. So right away, we see a huge shift. We go from the literal, lost in his thoughts, to the much more literary, absorbed in his meditations. You see the difference? Absorbé dans ses méditations. It's just more formal, more evocative. It doesn't just paint a picture of a guy thinking. It paints a picture of an emperor, deep in strategic thought. It just fits the character so much better.
Oh, this one is a perfect example of showing versus telling. The literal French just says he threw himself flat on his stomach, which is okay. But the literary choice, s'étala de tout son long, spread himself out full length. Wow, it's so much more descriptive, so much more dramatic. You can almost see the action unfolding right in front of you.
Here's a change that's subtle, but really powerful. See, anyone can ask for a name, but an emperor inquires. That one word, sentinel, is so much more distinguished, more refined. It elevates Napoleon's status and totally reinforces the tone of the whole piece.
And finally, we've got this little detail. Instead of just pinching his ear, the translator chooses pulling his ear, which is a way more idiomatic and lively expression in French. It adds this great layer of character, this familiar, almost fatherly gesture from the emperor that contrasts so beautifully with the tension of the scene. You know, all these little upgrades lead us to a much bigger, more philosophical question that every single translator has to wrestle with. Where exactly do you draw the line between being faithful to the original text and injecting your own artistic style?
It's the ultimate dilemma, isn't it? Do you prioritize a word-for-word, totally accurate translation, or do you take some creative liberties to capture the spirit of the original, even if it means changing a few words here and there? Let's look at one choice that really puts this to the test.
Okay, so in the original punchline, the soldier says he doesn't waste powder on sparrows. It's a neutral term. But the translator adds the word vials, which means vile or base. Why do that? Well, the goal was to really amplify Napoleon's mocking tone. By making the sparrows seem completely worthless, it cranks up the irony and makes that punchline land even harder. It's a clear, deliberate break from the original text, all to serve the spirit of the story.
This is a concept we can call stylistic enrichment. It's a conscious choice to enhance the text, to give it more punch. Another great example from our story is changing the simple phrase he shoots to he aims his rifle, braque son fusil. It's more specific, right? It's more visceral, and it adds this layer of military precision that just feels perfect for the scene.
So after all these tweaks, all these upgrades and artistic choices, what does the final, polished version actually look like? All right, let's reveal a few of the key lines.
Right from the very first line, you can feel the difference. Instead of just a basic word for darkness, the translator uses tenebris, which is closer to gloom or deep darkness. It's immediately more atmospheric, more literary.
And what about the bullet? Instead of it simply whistling, the final version says it came whistling, vinsifle. It's a tiny change, but it gives the action this narrative, almost cinematic feel, as if the bullet itself decided to show up. Now here, we see another layer of pure interpretation. The translator adds the phrase, with feigned severity. That wasn't in the original at all, but it adds this wonderful depth to Napoleon's character, showing he's got this playful, almost theatrical side. It's like a little stage direction for the reader.
And here it is, the final punchline. He only aims his rifle at emperors. The combination of that precise, powerful wording just makes the soldier's wisecrack land with so much more wit and impact. This is the payoff for all of those careful, artistic choices.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, it's that translation is absolutely a creative act, not a mechanical one. Every single word choice matters. It shapes the tone, the rhythm, the characters. The very best translators are always walking that fine line, balancing faithfulness to the original with their own artistic style, and always making deliberate choices to serve the true spirit of the story.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought. The next time you pick up a book that's been translated, maybe just take a moment. Think about that invisible artist, the translator, and the countless creative choices they had to make to bring that story to you, not just in word, but in spirit.